The leader opposite is showing us exactly what shameful, spineless leadership looks like.
When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko Prime Minister?
It was a choice to pander to white nationalists, not an accident. And it is a choice to continue to not condemn them.
Will the Prime Minister stop giving out insane quantities of heroin-grade opioids?
We will continue to be there to help heal people, not imprison them.
They are there to help kill people right now. That's exactly what they're doing.
The political pulse in Parliament this week was quickened by insinuation and allegations centred around two difficult and divisive political issues. The Conservatives bluntly accused the Prime Minister of having policies killing people with his support of BC's decriminalisation policies on drugs. The Liberals pressed back with allegations that a Poilievre-led government can't be trusted to protect abortion rights. Well, later in the week, a Conservative candidate dropped her nomination bid in the GTA, claiming the process had been corrupted. We're going to discuss it all with our party insiders. Greg McEachern is a former Liberal ministerial staffer. Melanie Richer is a former NDP communications director. And Fred Delory is a former Conservative national campaign manager. I want to say happy Friday, gang, but after that summary we saw this week, I don't know how happy it is. Greg, you wanted to pick up on that clip of Poilievre saying you're standing with the killing clip, essentially. Yeah. What are your thoughts on how this played out this week?
A long time ago, I worked for Belinda Stronach as a Liberal MP, and there was an incident where she was called a name. I wasn't going to refer to this, but something that she said at the time stuck in my head, which is, this is a workplace. You would not be allowed to make those accusations downstairs in the newsroom. I wouldn't in my office. You would not be. Human resources would get involved pretty quickly. Yet these are our representatives. Wednesday night, I was at a book award. There were a lot of MPs there. Greg Fergus was at the mic, the speaker, and there were Conservative MPs that were kind of heckling him in the room. And
in a fun way?
No.
Oh, okay.
And what's interesting is you could see the glitch. They forgot that they were not in the House of Commons, because civilians would turn and look at them and say, what would your reaction be if you didn't recognize this person? You know, you would say, who's that crazy person yelling at the person at the stage? And there had already been a protest. So, look, I've heard a lot of both sides about this, both siding of this. And again, whoever does this, you know, call it out. But in that clip you showed there, I had a moment where I stopped when I heard that, you know, basically applying the killing blame to a government. And I thought, you know, 20 years ago, there would be a big record scratch moment, and that would have led the national news. And now we're kind of immune to it. We are the boiled frog. And I kind of would like to encourage people just to kind of take a pause, a breath. You're 20 points ahead. You're not in government. And even if you are in government and you behave that way, you kind of look like a sore winner. You are our representatives, and just kind of keep an eye on the language.
So, yeah, Mel, I kind of take Greg's point that I was really surprised that a lot of this hasn't become actual, like, news stories, you know, in papers and on the network shows. We've talked about it on the show quite a bit this week, because I do think it marks an escalation in where things have gone, and I'm not sure it's a good thing. I mean, what's your thoughts on it?
Totally not a good thing. You know, I was saying earlier, I was also at this event, and my feeling is, I don't know if I'm just fundamentally not built that way, that I can't comprehend how grown adults can behave like that outside of the House of Commons. And then the fact that I had to say outside of the House of Commons was like, no, that's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous.
This is totally acceptable in Parliament.
Totally,
you know?
It shouldn't be. It was like, no, Mel, this shouldn't actually be acceptable there either. As it relates to, you know, the toxic drug crisis, I think the tone and the rhetoric around it is just so divisive and dangerous. And if you are committed to, you know, solving what's happening in BC, I don't think that this is the tone that you bring to it. I think if you're actually committed to, you know, rolling your sleeves up and figuring out solutions to stop people from dying, that's not how you say it. That's not how you do it. That's not how you behave. And I think folks who are in BC and who are worried about this and concerned about some policies which are fair, I don't think that they're probably appreciating the tone that he took in the House this week.
Fred, what do you think?
I'm going to make two contradictory statements here.
Okay.
The House of Commons is designed the way it is to be two sword lengths away. It is meant for combat, but a peaceful way, but you're going to use rhetoric, you're going to use words, you're going to ramp things up. At the same time, you had a good panel this week, David, with an Angus Reid poll showing the negatives of the party leaders. And when Canadians are watching this, right now, it's a race to the bottom. Trudeau's at the bottom. It's not that Poilievre is at the top. It's not that he is the most popular leader. He's not as unpopular as Trudeau. So it's pox on all their houses. No one is standing up and being a real champion here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the two sword lengths, but we're a long way from 1215 and Runnymede when the Magna Carta got signed.
Still,
and all these things,
you're fighting for control of a government.
Yeah.
This is a peaceful way we do it, and it's through words.
But just a quick thing I want to, Mel said, what interesting, solving the problem of what's happening in British Columbia. It's not just British Columbia. They only talk about British Columbia. Right. This is a national crisis, primarily in the western provinces, but the NDP government that's working with the Liberal government is being signaled out as if no one's dying from fentanyl-laced drugs in other parts of Canada.
Yeah, and I worked on the opioid issue from, I think, 2012 to about 2015. You know, there's media like Dope Sick, the series, where, you know, this started in the United States. There were a lot of warnings there. And if you want to both side this, you can say, you know, former health minister under the Conservatives, Leona Glukak, at one point legalized generic oxy. Ronna Ambrose reversed that. There were problems from that. But this is brand new territory. It's really tough. I get that the BC government tried to do this and now they're reversing it. I'm okay with that. Like, look, experts advise this. I think that probably the pandemic has worsened a lot of things, but let's have that conversation rather than just making accusations that are really horrible, because the only people that stay around for that are people that share your anger or actually have increased amount of anger. And we've saw it a lot. Charlie Angus wrote an op-ed about this. We have MPs, we have mayors that are not running again because the rhetoric is getting so high, and maybe it's time just to take a, I don't want to be, look, Fred, I'm not new to politics. I know how Parliament works, but there just feels like we're starting to cross a line, and this might be a time just to kind of say, let's take a breath here.
Yeah, Paul Wells earlier on the show talked about how it was 20 years ago Jack Layton accused Paul Martin of the social program cuts he made as finance minister to balance the budget. It killed Canadians, and that was that record scratch moment that Greg talked about. But that stands out because it was so singular. Right? It's not anymore.
Not
like it's
occurrence.
all the time. It's all the time. And so, Mel, I guess maybe this brings us to your kind of topic you want to talk about, because there's been a lot of talk about birth control, abortion, also in politics, and this feels like another conversation on another issue that has the potential to have some of these flashpoint moments.
Right. It's funny because a colleague of mine said this week, you know, oh, we're going to start hearing about these different issues because, you know, the Liberals are losing, so they're just going to try to throw everything. And I kind of sat there and I said, well, if MPs didn't continue to bring up stuff that, you know, for the majority of folks have decided on, then this wouldn't be a thing to talk about. And when, you know, looking back to last Friday, we were talking about how I thought the NDP was purposeful about talking about pharmacare and talking about birth control and putting it directly to Pierre Poilievre and asking, what are you going to do about this? Are you going to stand with women who are asking us to do this, or are you going to vote against it? And we kind of saw that play out. They voted against it. They didn't support the motion to pass unanimously. And then we started seeing MPs put forward, I forget the...
Arnold Viersen tabled a petition calling for regulation for rights for the preborn. Was the language he used.
Throughout the country, and then we saw them standing at, or we saw him standing at the rally later this week. That was anti-choice, and it just feels to me like if you are actually pro-abortion, if you're actually pro-choice, if you're actually, you know, empowering women's rights to choose what they do with their body, then this isn't a thing that you're doing. This isn't a thing that you're allowing your caucus to do. This isn't a thing that you're allowing a conversation to have. And, you know, their team can say all day that they're not going to reopen this debate, but what we're seeing, what women are seeing, is the actions of some of their MPs. And to me, that's pretty terrifying.
So, Fred, on that, like we've got a statement from Pierre Poilievre's office flat out saying a Conservative government will not legislate on abortion, would never use a notwithstanding clause on this. They're reserving that for justice issues is the way they have framed their willingness to use that particular part of the Constitution. But, you know, you do have Viersen doing this, Kathy Wagenthal doing her thing. They're kind of creating the opening there for their critics.
Look, the reason the Liberals and NDP always bring this up is because it works. it does drive votes away from the Conservatives when this issue comes up. And if they think there's smoke, there's fire sometimes with some of these MPs. The reality is, if you look at the Harper years, it was the exact same stuff going on. We probably had maybe the same or around the same number of social Conservatives in the caucus. And these issues didn't come up because the leader was very clear then, just like Poilievre is now. This is not going to be something that the government will bring up or support in any way.
But we had private members' bills last year. Kathy Wagenthal had those. Arnold Wilson, like it comes up, it flares up.
It does.
I guess is a way to describe it.
And they will be, I assume, just like they were in the Harper years, they were defeated. The one thing that concerned me with this, seeing Viersen and Wagenthal, I heard from good sources that they were instructed not to go to this.
Yeah, the Star reported that.
So if that's the case, it's going to be interesting to see what does Poilievre do with that then. If they were instructed and they went to that and spoke to that event, is there going to be repercussions, or can MPs go and do this? Is there going to be discipline?
You know, just bring up Paul Wells again. He joked earlier, he said, had Arnold Viersen come out over at lunchtime and said he supported the CBC, he would have been gone by the afternoon. But, you know, they get to do this.
You know, at the aforementioned book award event the other night, I talked to a couple of Conservative MPs, and yes, it felt like old times, like where you can actually be social and get along. And one of them said that he's not allowed to be on this show. So they weren't allowed to go to that pro-life rally, but they went. They're not allowed to come on the show, they don't go. We hear so much about message discipline in the Conservatives, like how, you know, were the private members' bill and the petition able to get by? Well, you know, if the leader did not want these things to happen, I hate hearing that the Liberals and the NDP keep bringing this up. They keep bringing it up because there keeps being private members' bills and petitions. And it's only a wedge issue if you allow yourself to be wedged. And I think I know it's easy for media to kind of say, again, it's the both side thing. But if it's over and done with, then we shouldn't have seen a bill from Wagenthal. We shouldn't have seen those MPs out there who apparently were told not to go.
And I was just going to say, in the broader zeitgeist, right, with what's happening in the United States, like you're seeing the rolling back of the rights there, and this is what, you know, inflames passions on it. Totally.
And, you know, if it was a different issue, you would have seen some discipline, and we didn't see some discipline. And I think this continues to show the almost, I don't want to say flirting, that's the wrong word, but the appeasing this, you know, part of their base, that this is the kind of stuff that they want to see, instead of just shutting it down categorically in every shape and form. It's kind of like, oh, well, we're going to let this kind of play out over here, and we'll see how that goes. So if, you know, they're categorical about it, then be categorical about it. So
Fred, there are a lot of Canadians who are anti-abortion. There are a lot of Canadians who want severe restrictions on abortion. A lot of them are conservative. A lot of them are in other parties. Not every conservative is anti-abortion. But how do you you worked with Aaron O'Toole and the caucus challenges and the disagreement of his more moderate stance. Then how do you manage this?
I was there when Harper was running for leader too. Yeah. So throughout his entire reign as leader, it is a challenge. They are not our base. The Social Conservatives are not a base. They are a fringe within the party. The party is a broad coalition, and now the Liberals did have Social Conservatives up until Trudeau. He drove them out, and a lot. Them
and the Senators. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I made. Yeah. I won't say
I'll keep it to myself too.
So yeah, there was the Social Conservatives are a part of the Conservative coalition. It is a broad coalition. There's lots of different factions, and that's one of the challenges all Conservative leaders have, is keeping the coalition together.
Okay, we're getting a bit tight on time, so I want to get to your issue. You wanted to talk about the nomination in Richmond Hill, where Sabrina Nadeau says she got done dirty, and she's mad about it.
So for a bit of context, again, referencing Stephen Harper, I was his Director of Political Operations. I was Aaron O'Toole's National Campaign Manager. In those two positions, I probably oversaw over 1,000 nomination races on behalf of the party myself, which I think from that experience and what I'm seeing here, this is someone who knew they were going to lose a nomination and is trying to save face. Yes, they're being, I haven't seen the emails that she's claiming that are going out attacking her, and by attacking her, showing the stuff that she's written on different issues.
Some of it's also a bit mean. I've seen it.
For sure.
It's not kind.
In politics, I think we've discovered tonight, can be a tough business and a bit mean at times. I think it's unfortunate that she's gone out this way and the scorched earth approach. I know, having worked at the party, we do have checks into this stuff. We look in to see if there's wrongdoing, and it's legitimate. The National Council takes their job seriously, and they have the ability to look and see if lists are going. She clearly had a list of herself. She was talking about IDing votes without having a list. You can't ID votes unless you know who the members are, or at least were recently. So I think the whole thing is a bit far-fetched.
Her argument, though, Greg, on this, is that she had an old list or whatever, and then, I don't know the truth of it, but the sore loser argument that's kind of coming out, what does she gain from doing it this way? There's no shame in losing in a nomination. I don't understand what the upside is for her to come out and score Shirth, as Fred says.
I don't know her background politically, but I would say this is an example of why, elected office shouldn't be your first foray around the political system. I'd say that to Mark Carney as well. Go to a Liberal event, bring a tray of sandwiches, stack some chairs, learn who are the doers and who are just the talkers. But this is embarrassing for the Conservatives because there was a lot of promotion around her. She was on a panel with a bunch of elected MPs a couple of months ago with some very interesting
future
sponsors.
of the Conservatives.
Exactly. And again, the internet lives forever. How did they not know this? There's one thing I find interesting. She says that there's a fictional person named Norman McDaniel who was sending out emails. And she was told in the article, she says, Mado is quoted as saying, she was told by the party this person does not exist. But Sarah Fisher, on behalf of the Conservatives, said, everything that Mado is saying is false. So this is not my chair to give away, David, but I'm going to tell you, next week, if Norman McDaniels wants this chair to come on and prove that he's real, I will give my seat up.
All right, well, we'll see. Yeah, she said the allegations that of corruption and the party not taking us seriously were false. I don't know about the Norman McDaniels deal. Mel, we got about 40 seconds.
Yeah, I agree with you a little bit that it is a bit of a stain on the Conservatives, but I also think that this is just bad teamsmanship. If this is a team that you wanted to be on and then you're going out and you're trying to take the team down with you, well, it shows that you probably wouldn't have been a good team member to begin with. Canadians don't like to see that. They like to see that your party orders are, or your orders are your affairs are in order, and that kind of shows that it doesn't do that. Just quickly, while Conservatives like to say that media is biased and they always attack Conservatives, what we saw this week is, for the most part, journalists were like, oh, we're going to take a quick look at this instead of jumping on it. So proving them a bit wrong on this issue.
No, I mean, look, we had Sabrina on the show last night, and I asked her, like, what's your proof? It sounds like a lot of assumptions. What's your conclusions? And, you can watch that interview. It's posted on YouTube. All right, I want to thank you all, Greg McEachern, Melanie Richer, and Fred Delory.